The following public affairs presentation is produced exclusively for the Cox Channel. And now, the verdict.
Welcome to The Verdict. I'm Kent Myers. Mick Cornett will not be with us this week as he is still out on the campaign trail. We hope to have him back soon, and I certainly will be anxious to get him back. I know you will as well. Today we're talking about a very somber topic. We're going to be talking about a new act passed by the Oklahoma legislature entitled the Kelsey-Briggs Reform Act that deals with child abuse and how such cases are to be handled in the juvenile courts around the state. It's a topic that has been getting a lot of attention in the press and at the legislature. It's something that I know you'll be interested in hearing about. I've had enough personal experience representing children who have been sexually abused, emotionally, physically abused, to know just how attention-filled those cases are and how tragic many of them are. And we're going to bring you today an expert who deals with these cases every day. The Honorable Roger Stewart will be with us, a juvenile judge from Oklahoma County. When we come back, we will be gone for a couple of minutes, and then we'll be back to visit with Judge Stewart. You're watching The Verdict.
At Chesapeake Energy, here's a few of our favorite Hornets. Alexis likes reading. Sam enjoys history. Alec loves math. Chesapeake is proud to support both the Oklahoma City NBA Hornets and the Young Hornets at Horace Mann Elementary, where over 150 Chesapeake employees mentor to children each week. The students gain a lot from the experience, but not as much as we do. Chesapeake Energy, committed to building a better Oklahoma.
And Blankenship has stopped at the line of scrimmage. No gain on the play. Leaving it 4th and 7 on the Tiger 46-yard line. 38 seconds on the clock. The Tigers have no choice but to go for it. Wiggins in to do the kicking. Here's the snap. And the kick is away.
You need this one to get satellite HD. This one's your DVR. This one's for local channels. This one's...
What are we supposed to do with all this stuff?
Got you covered. Oh, by the way, that old satellite stuff makes a great end table.
That doesn't look so bad, right, honey?
Don't live in satellite denial. Get the latest entertainment without the hassles from Cox, your friend in the digital age.
High school sports don't stop at the spring.
One on goalie. Oh, great play!
And neither do we.
Bases loaded, bottom of the first.
Hit shot, and it's a goal. Shot up the middle. That's going to bring home the winning run.
The Cox Channel. We love high school sports.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Myers sitting in Mick Cornett's absence, but he'll be back soon. We're very pleased today to have a return guest to The Verdict, the Honorable Roger Stewart. Judge Stewart has been a juvenile judge in Oklahoma County for the past 11 years. He did his undergraduate work at the University of Oklahoma and his law work also at the College of Law at the University of Oklahoma. He has been an adjunct professor at University of Central Oklahoma for a number of years teaching juvenile law. He has handled many juvenile cases, and we're here talking today about some recent activity in the legislature that may affect not only what Judge Stewart does, but the process in general. So back for his second visit is Judge Roger Stewart. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We're pleased you're here. Tell our viewers what you do as a juvenile judge handling cases that involve children in Oklahoma County.
Well, there's three major categories, two of which are handling delinquent cases, which are cases where children under the age of 18 commit crimes. Those crimes range from property crimes to drive-by shootings. We also handle inpatient cases, kids who have mental illness and problems, and placing them inpatient. And then probably the largest category of types of cases that we handle are deprived cases. And those are cases where children are abused or neglected. Now, we don't handle the criminal side of that with respect to the parents. What we handle and adjudicate is the family and determine whether or not the parents can protect their children, whether or not the parents have been adequately rehabilitated in order to return the children to the home, and whether or not we should terminate parental rights and maybe seek adoption for the children.
Well, so the abused or deprived child is in the juvenile justice system typically, not because they did anything wrong, but because others either did something wrong or failed to do something they should.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. There are cases where a child has been neglected, where the home is not appropriate, where they've not been going to school, where their clothing's inadequate, cases along those lines, and also kids who've been abused, either by their parent or somebody within that home.
Something that makes the home not a safe place for the child to be.
Yeah.
Well, describe for our viewers the players in this scenario. What entities are involved in a typical deprived or abused case?
Well, the cases are fairly complex and have quite a few players in them, more so than most cases that are out there, with the exception of maybe multi-district antitrust litigation. When I call cases up, it's, of course, we have attorneys that represent the children. That's not true in every case, but Oklahoma, in every state, but Oklahoma has been very progressive in that area, and we have attorneys that represent the voice of the child in any proceeding that affects the child. Our resources there, I'm one of 4 juvenile judges. We have 4 attorneys that represent just the children. Those are out of the public defender's office. They represent about 1,000 children each. Actually, I'm sure they represent more than that. That figure was drawn for a couple of years ago. We have district attorneys. It's the responsibility of the district attorney's office to bring the case, to file the petition that gets the case started in court, and is also the burden of the district attorney to prove that a child has been neglected or abused, and ultimately to seek termination of parental rights if necessary. We have attorneys for parents. If a parent is indigent in the state of Oklahoma, they're entitled to legal representation. We have 5 lawyers who represent the vast majority of parents that come to my court, and those 5 lawyers average 200 to 300 cases each. We have CASAs, who are court-appointed special advocates. These are volunteers that come from the community, and they're trained in the processes, and they advocate for the best interest of the child. And from there, we can have all kinds of people. We have foster parents who come to court. Foster parents sometimes have their attorneys. We have grandparents that come to court, other relatives.
And Department of Human Services.
Well, and I almost forgot them. I shouldn't have. But yes, and each time I call a case up, there's a DHS social worker that has been assigned to that case, and who is the person who is making sure that the child's needs are met, and who is referring services to parents and assisting us.
Now, the child that's removed from the home because of alleged abuse or being neglected will be taken typically to the Oklahoma County shelter here in Oklahoma City, and then there's something called a show cause hearing pretty promptly after that. Can you just briefly describe that?
Every child, you're right, every child that gets picked up is placed in the shelter, where they stay anywhere from that day to maybe 90 days at times if we can't find a placement. The show cause hearing is held within 48 hours of the child being removed. It's an informal hearing that guarantees or is designed to ensure that the case gets quickly before a judge. In our county, it's a referee who finds that there is a basis for the removal prior to the filing of a petition.
And then if the decision is that the removal was appropriate, I guess there are really one of 2 solutions. The whatever bad situation that caused the removal in the first place gets corrected, and the home is an appropriate place to return the child is one solution. If it cannot be corrected, if the abuse is heinous and shocking or the like, the other route might be termination of the parental rights.
And that's exactly right. The vast majority of our cases that come before us in Oklahoma County and across the state, and I believe nationwide, are what we call reunification cases. That is, we look at the parent and we see what the problem is in the home, and we try to correct those conditions that are in the home so that we can reunify the child with its parents, because we've learned over the 150 years that this type of work's been done, that if we can fix the home, that is in the best interest of the child. Another category of cases is where the abuse is so heinous and so shocking that we're not going to run the risk of correcting the conditions, that we're going to go ahead and proceed straight to termination. We provide services, DHS provides services to the parent after we've identified what the problems in the home are, and then we give them services. So if the problem in the home is drug and alcohol abuse, then we set them up for going inpatient or receiving drug and alcohol services. If they do that within a certain period of time, then the child's returned to the home. If, on the other hand, the parent doesn't do it, if the case starts dragging out and it doesn't look like they're going to rehabilitate, then we seek termination of parental rights.
We all know about the publicity of the horrible case in Oklahoma, Kelsey-Briggs, who was murdered as a 2-year-old, or allegedly murdered as a 2-year-old. And that has brought the legislature around to passing the Kelsey-Briggs Child Protection Reform Act. Just very generally, in about 30 seconds, just kind of describe in a real overview fashion what that act is about.
Well, I think the Act has done a good job in identifying some problems that are currently in the system. I think the legislature did a good job identifying those problems. Part of it has to do with the law, part of it has to do with various aspects of the system. It's also brought to bear some extra resources in particularly difficult type cases where additional law enforcement can be brought in to do investigations.
Well, what I want to do is take a break now, and when we come back we'll get into some of the specifics of this Reform Act. We are visiting with the Honorable Roger Stewart, Juvenile Judge of Oklahoma County, about child abuse, child neglect, and the Kelsey-Briggs Child Protection Reform Act. You're watching The Verdict. We'll be right back.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Okiwani is an Indian name for a place where children play. When we obtained the camp, we found a lot of oil debris left in the woods. We saw a commercial about how the oil and natural gas industry cleans up old oil well sites. We called the OERB, and they agreed to remove tons of concrete and steel. It didn't cost us a thing. Thousands of children have left their footprints on this land. Thanks to the oil and gas industry, they will for a long time to come.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Hi, honey. You've got to check this out.
What? What are we listening to?
I had digital phone service installed today.
It sounds just like before.
I know, but it's going to save us a ton of money.
With Cox Digital Telephone, you'll save big every month. Keep your same phone number and get your favorite calling features. Just pay less.
That does sound good.
You should hear the upstairs phone.
Stuck in a rut? Move your career onto the fast track in one of the most exciting segments of the high-tech industry. The Cox Communications National Wireless Call Center for Excellence is hiring employees in Oklahoma City to specialize in wireless customer care. Management opportunities are available for people with substantial experience in the wireless industry. If you're ready to take your career to the next level, submit your resume online at www.cox.com and become a part of the Cox tradition of excellence.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Myers visiting today with the Honorable Roger Stewart, Juvenile Judge for Oklahoma County, pardon me, talking about the Kelsey-Briggs Reform Act dealing with juvenile justice and child protection. Judge, we introduced the act only briefly in the first segment. Tell us a little bit more what this act really does.
It has about 5 major provisions that I think are important to look at. First of all, it requires uniform orders in all deprived proceedings, uniform from county to county across the state, which also requires that the judge document what the recommendations of the parties or the participants are in the process and recommendations that they're making with respect to custody or placement with the children.
Yeah, let me just stop us there. We'll get to the others in just a second. Of course, without getting into the Kelsey-Briggs case specifically, one of the claims is that the child was sent home when perhaps the child shouldn't have been sent home and bad things happened. I guess the purpose of this uniform order is to let someone looking at it after the fact see who advocated what position and why, and then what the judge did in regard to those various positions.
That appears to be the purpose of it.
Yeah, but you've been doing this for some time, have you not?
We do that in Oklahoma County. We document what the recommendations are when we know what those recommendations are. Now, there's times when providers will come to court or not come to court and won't make their recommendations known. But to a large extent, we already do that.
Okay. What else?
It adds DHS as a party to an appeal whenever the court decides to release a child from state custody. DHS can appeal that placement, and until the appeal is ruled upon, the child remains where the child's at.
So if the child were returned home, that would be releasing them from custody?
Right.
And if that happened and DHS thought that was inappropriate, they now could appeal, whereas in the past they could not.
That's correct. And it's not the final appeal, but the appeal of that particular decision of the court.
Okay. What else?
One of the, I think, most important aspects of what the legislature did was they formed a Juvenile Law Reform Committee. And this is a standing committee of 20 people who are all involved in various aspects of the juvenile court and juvenile systems processes, as well as outside folks, law professors, and designees, citizen designees. And this standing committee will review the Title 10, the Children's Code, which are all the laws that apply to kids in these types of proceedings. They're going to be reviewing those to see what changes they can make to improve it, to make it, to clarify it. And it's been very confusing in the past. To clarify the existing law and to make recommendations as to what the law should be for the future. And I think that's an outstanding idea. I think
and those appointees are appointed by various people in the
various
state
people,
government?
the Senate Pro Tem, the law schools. Each law school within the state will designate a person. The judges will designate a person. Just various folks.
Well, okay. What else besides that committee has the act done?
Finally, I think an important aspect of it is that it allows the judge and or the director of the Department of Human Services to request the OSBI to investigate in cases involving criminal conduct. I don't anticipate that that'll be something that they'll be called upon a lot, but it gives extra criminal resources, extra investigative resources in particularly difficult cases, like the Kelsey-Briggs case apparently was. So it gives additional law enforcement resources to juvenile courts and the Department of Human Services.
Now, this act is going to require this type of conduct by the court statewide. It's going to become as uniform as it can be under those circumstances.
That's correct.
What's your take on this act? is there anything that stands out that's not in it that ought to be, or anything in it that ought not to be? To the extent you can comment on it, what do you think about it?
Well, I think overall the act is not a bad act. I don't think it does any harm. I think that it does assist certain components of the system, and I do think that establishing this committee is money in the bank for our future of our juvenile laws in the state. With respect to legislative mandates and statutory amendments, you know, we're the child welfare process. A child who's in our custody, who's in state's custody, who's being seen in front of by a judge, who has a DHS worker, all those children have already experienced a tragedy in their life before we ever see it. That is, they've been abused or they've been neglected. And we can develop and work on our system, and we should continue to work on our system until we have the very best. But the very best system is not going to be a perfect system, because we're just humans, and you know, I'm just a judge. All I can do is rule upon the facts and the law that's been presented to me. I can't read the hearts and minds of parents. I can't see the future. I don't know, and cannot guarantee that a child is going to be safe the next day. I have no absolute guarantees. Why? I can't even guarantee that I'll be here tomorrow. It seems to me that while we work on the system, we need to be asking ourselves here in Oklahoma, why is it that we're producing so many parents that are abusing and neglecting their children? I mean, these rates, these abuse and neglect rates are increasing each year, and we see horrific things, horrific crimes committed against children, and we need to be asking ourselves why that is.
Yeah, let's focus just on Oklahoma County. Of course, I'm sure it's heavier here than other places within the state, perhaps, but we have at least, in any given day, today, as you're watching this show, there are at least 4,000 kids in DHS custody who have either been abused or neglected. And that's a terrifically high rate. And of course, they come in and out of the system, so there's a constant turnover. But I guess you're asking, why do we have so many?
Right. And I think that that's what the community is going to have to ask itself.
Well, and to ask, excuse me for jumping onto the soapbox here, but to ask a judge to have 1,000 cases that they see perhaps every 3 months, at least once every 3 months, and to have public defenders, have 1,000 clients, and to know everything they need to know about about the child and the circumstances, asking a lot.
It is asking a lot, and I'll tell you now, I'm a little biased because I'm a juvenile judge and have been for 11 years. But these are tough decisions. These are the hardest decisions. I've been I've been a lawyer since 1978 and been involved in lots of different types of litigation, criminal and civil. And I'll tell you that these are the most complex types of cases that I've ever had any experience with. And there's so much riding on the decision. You see, I don't think it's a mistake that the example of Solomon's wisdom in the Old Testament was a child custody case. I don't think that's a mistake at all. I think it's hard now. It's always been hard. So when a judge looks at these cases, he realizes, and I'll tell you, it will humble you to make some of these decisions. It will let you know exactly how limited you are, and it doesn't matter how much education you have or how smart you are or the facts and how much law you've got. It is a humbling experience to go in and make a decision that you know is going to affect a child's life for the rest of their life and all of the people that they're going to touch. So these are hard cases. And my point is, I guess my ultimate point is, we need legislation, we need to continue to work on this system, but let's don't forget that the system only comes into play after parents have neglected and abused their children, and we need to be asking ourselves, why is this happening, and what can we do to prevent it?
Judge, we got to interrupt. Thank you so much for coming. It's been very enlightening for me, and as I know it has for our viewers. We've been talking to Judge Roger Stewart, juvenile judge here in Oklahoma County. You're watching The Verdict. We'll be right back.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. a place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Here's the pitch. Line drive on it. The Cardinals won the pennant. The Cardinals win. That's a winner. A World Series winner for the Cardinals. Oh, an unbelievable catch. Swing and a miss. Get up, baby. Get up, get up, get up, get up. Home run.
Your slice of Cardinals heaven can be found on the Cox Channel all season long.
¿Eres tú?
There you go. Cox Communications está buscando empleados entusiásticos y motivados.
Disfruta de nuestros beneficios, pago competitivo, grandes ventajas y oportunidades para el adelante.
Si desea hacer una diferencia,
tenemos un lugar para usted aquí con Cox Communications.
Visítanos en el internet o llame para ver qué oportunidades tenemos para usted aquí en Cox.
¿Eres tú?
Cox Communications está orgulloso de ofrecer igualdad de empleos.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Myers. We've been talking about a very somber subject today, and there is an axiom that you hear in law school from time to time that hard cases make bad law. And oftentimes that is true. A legislative body may overreact to a particularly heinous case, such as this Kelsey-Briggs case was, but I don't think that's true in this case. I think the Oklahoma legislature has made some very responsible changes in our juvenile justice system, as explained by Judge Roger Stewart, and time will tell whether it improves the system or not, but I think it has an excellent chance of doing so, and this disproves that axiom, I think, in this case. Next week, we're going to be visiting with John Richter, the new United States Attorney for the Western District of Oklahoma. We're going to hear about what's going on in the federal court system in our jurisdiction, and we'd like to know what you would like to see or hear on The Verdict. Check us out on the Verdict website, theverdict.tv. Let us know what kind of show you'd like to have, what you'd like for us to show you, and we'll do it. For Mick Cornett, I'm Kent Myers. See you next week.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.